Hey guys, tonight we trudge into the Amazon's dense canopy, where morning mist clings to every leaf and unseen creatures rustle just beyond the beam of your headlamp. You probably won't survive this trek unscathed if you forget your insect repellent, but that's part of the fun. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together as you step onto the spongy carpet of fallen leaves. Every footfall releases a tiny cloud of damp earth. You inhale the heady scent of wet mahogany and ivy, and for an instant, the outside world feels impossibly distant. Sunbeams slant through towering ceiba trunks, casting emerald prisms that dance at the edge of vision. The shirt is damp, and you can almost feel each droplet of dew cheekily sliding down your neck. Nature's way of reminding you who's boss. You remember that modern surveys confirm the Amazon basin spans over 5.5 million square kilometers, harboring roughly 1 in 10 known species on Earth. That statistic alone could make your head spin like a dizzying vortex of biodiversity. Beneath your boots, leafcutter ants march in regimented columns, their tiny mandibles cutting perfect circles from fresh foliage. Proof that even the smallest inhabitants wield meticulous order. You try not to imagine those circles piling sky high, though it's tempting to picture an ant skyscraper rising amid the ferns. Joke number 1. At least they never ask you to pay rent. Rustling above signals a troop of howler monkeys greeting dawn with throaty barks. Their chorus echoes like an otherworldly soundtrack, a reminder that life here obeys a different rhythm. Historians still argue whether some pre-Columbian civilizations engineered vast earthwork cities here or merely built dispersed villages. Recent ground-penetrating radar hints at geometric mounds and canals that rival anything in Mesopotamia. You pause, heart hammering. Because if true, you're walking atop the remains of pyramids hidden by centuries of green growth. A breeze stirs, carrying the haunting cry of a distant harpy eagle rare, fierce and ironically named after half-human creatures of myth. You tilt your head, half hoping you'll glimpse that phantom silhouette against the sky. Fringe lore suggests locals once claimed these raptors delivered messages from forest spirits, a notion scientists dismiss but storytellers embrace with glee. Joke number 2. If you ever get a carrier eagle, I hope it brings snacks. Ferns brush your forearms as you navigate a tangle of roots thick as python coils. The sticky humidity clings to your hair and seeps into your bones. You wonder what secrets linger beneath the damp humus. Bones of long-lost travelers. Fragments of pottery inscribed with glyphs no one can fully decipher. The forest floor feels like a shredded history book, each layer whispering tales you can almost make out. One fringe whisperer claims invisible lights flicker between roots at midnight. Some call them sky spirits. Others think they're bioluminescent fungi playing tricks on tired eyes. You duck under a curtain of vines and emerge into a moonlit glade, though it's barely dawn. Here, giant kapok trees rise like ancient columns supporting a leafy cathedral. Their buttress roots form caverns you could crawl into. Perhaps an ideal hideout if you ever needed crocodile dung sunscreen to repulse more than just bugs, I bet. You remember that joke from last time, right? No. Well, now you will. Birdsong shifts to a quieter hum as you notice clusters of unfamiliar fungi glowing faintly at your feet. Colors fade from electric blue to dim lavender when touched. Local. Shamans swear these mushrooms can induce visions of ancestral forests, though nobody's sure if that's chemistry or pure storytelling flair. Historians still argue whether early rubber tappers recognized medicinal properties in similar flora or simply grabbed latex for tires, leaving natural cures to rumor. Your pulse steadies as you follow a narrow game trail worn smooth by peccaries and tapirs. Spores drift on the breeze, tickling your lungs with peppery warmth. You take a breath, trying to memorize the taste of this untamed air, sharp with chlorophyll, earthy with decaying wood, sweet with orchid blossoms peeking through vines. A single bloom brushes your shoulder, and you startle, wondering if the plant deliberately reached out, testing your senses far ahead. Broken sunlight reveals the outline of a massive stone, an erratic so large it seems almost out of place. Moss carpets its surface, and upon closer inspection, you discern crude carvings, spirals and zigzags that resemble archaic maps. One fringe theory posits these glyphs point to hidden gold caches, spirited away by early explorers. Mainstream archaeologists shake their heads, insisting they're simply boundary markers for family clans. You crouch to trace one spiral with your fingertip, and the stone feels warm, as if storing centuries of solar kisses. You pause, listening, half expecting to hear it whisper ancient coordinates or a cautionary chant. Instead, silence reigns, rich, enveloping, and almost respectful. All around, life continues its ceaseless chorus, as though acknowledging your trespass but offering no judgment. A distant drumbeat echoes, or is it your own heartbeat? Either way, it's a reminder that this place has long welcomed dreamers and daredevils alike. You step back, leaving the moss-coated cipher untouched, trusting that some puzzles are meant to linger in the half-light between curiosity and caution. Ahead, the forest thickens, beckoning you deeper into its emerald labyrinth where every turn promises a fresh secret, and every shadow might conceal a legend waiting to be unspooled. You step off the soft earth onto a muddy riverbank, where each foot sinks halfway to your knee before you yank it free, sending up a tiny eruption of clay-scented water. The Amazon's tributaries wend through the undergrowth like serpents. There, mirrored surfaces dappled with sunlight that filters through the canopy. You pause to savor the smell of brackish water mingling with pollen, an oddly sweet aroma with an undertone of fish oils. Tiny minnows dart away in synchronized bursts as your shadow skates across their world. You half expect one bold fellow to scold you in squeaky squeaks. Joke number 1. If fish could talk, they'd probably lobby for swim-up bars and demand I stop stepping on their front lawns. A carved dugout canoe, narrow and sleek, lies grounded nearby. You clamber in, heart hammering as you push off with a paddle carved from hardwood. The hull creaks in protest, but it glides effortlessly when you find the sweet spot. You lean back, letting the river's current cradle you downstream. Like nature's lazy river ride, minus the cheesy rubber tubes. Sunbeams break the tangled green above, turning roiling eddies into shimmering ribbons. Each ripple seems to carry whispers, lost villages calling at dusk, half-heard legends drifting through moss-draped branches. Fringe lore claims that at dawn, spectral canoes emerge from the mist, paddled by ghostly apparitions of tribes long swallowed by the forest. Most scientists dismiss these as mist-borne illusions, but storytellers swear they once saw oars slicing through vapor. Though nobody could agree whether the specters wore feathered headdresses or straw hats, historians still argue whether such accounts point to genuine cultural memory or collective wishful thinking. You dip your hand into the warm water. Tiny droplets slide through your fingers, cold at first, then rapidly warming, reminding you that you're touching water that has journeyed more than 6,400 kilometers from the Andean foothills. The Amazon River holds the title of the largest river by discharge volume, nearly 20 times the output of the Mississippi. That fact alone propels your pulse, because you realize you're floating atop one of Earth's greatest arteries. carrying more water than any other single river. System. Beneath your hand, you can feel subtle currents tugging, as if the river itself is guiding you toward secrets buried beneath its depths, along the bank. Mottled gray stones loom like silent sentinels, each one etched with swirling lines that resemble waves and fish. Local folklore insists they're markers pointing to underwater cities built by vanished tribes who preferred living beneath the river's surface, breathing through gill-like apparatus fashioned from reeds. Fringe cartographers have even plotted potential locations using high-resolution sonar scans, though mainstream archaeologists dismiss these scans as misinterpretations of submerged tree trunks. Historians still argue whether pre-Columbian, Kea, Amazonian cultures engineered elaborate hydraulic systems to seasonally flood their villages, akin to the rice terraces of Asia, or whether such constructions are exaggerations born of colonial accounts. Craving sensational tales, a group of pink river dolphins surfaces ahead, arching sleek backs through the glassy water. You keep perfectly still, marveling at their playful flips and curious gazes. These creatures, known locally as Bodo, hold a special place in folklore. Some say they can shapeshift into handsome strangers at night to seduce unsuspecting villagers. Your eyes lock with one intelligent dolphin, and for a moment, swear it's smirking like it knows a secret it won't share. Joke number 2. If it offers to give you a ride to Atlantis, politely decline, or already late for bedtime. Sun climbs higher, and the forest's symphony crescendos. Cicadas crackle like static between AM radio stations. Macaws screech overhead in discordant parades of red and blue, and unseen insects hum in a chorus that tickles your ears. You reach for a canteen of water, but hesitate, 'cause you just drank from the river 5 minutes ago and nearly regretted a teen, lest your definition of flavored, a teen. Grit is more adventurous than mine. A quick reminder, always boil your river water, unless you fancy gastrointestinal surprises on top of haunted dolphins. Ahead, you notice the water darkening, shifting from muddy sienna to inky black. Suspended particles swirl like silted stars, and you're suddenly aware of what lurks beneath. A ripple curves around the canoe's hull, like an elegant ribbon tugging on your nerves. You squint, half convinced you see the flash of scales larger than your arm. Fringe fishermen swear that giant Arapimus pulmonate fish that can breathe air surface to peer at passing prey. One bizarre rumor suggests local tribes once tethered them to platforms, using the fish to amplify rain. Historians still argue whether Arapimas helped ancient communities forecast storms, or if that's poetic license run wild. The current stiffens, and you lean into your paddle, muscles straining as you fight the faster flow. You crest a bend, and there it is, a sandbar glittering with flecks of gold dust, sunlit like the opening of a treasure chest. You dip a fingertip into the sand and lift it to the light. Tiny motes glimmer with the promise of wealth. According to legend, these particles belong to a cursed golden city that sank centuries ago when its ruler angered river spirits. Every midnight, the sand murmurs for victims to scoop more gold, only to watch it vanish before morning's light. Scholarly debates persist. Some insist the gold traces come from natural alluvial processes, while others believe they're debris from colonial plunder, dumped by conquistadors overwhelmed by the river's caprices. Your canoe drifts closer to the bank, where ancient stumps of kauri pine rise like petrified sentries, their roots knotted as if clutching invisible rails. Here you step ashore once more, dropping your paddle to inspect carvings at the waterline, images of dancing figures and serpentine deities. The glyphs shimmer in the half-light, as if bioluminescent algae cling to them. A local guide told you that placing your ear against the stone might let you hear the laughter of ancestors, but nobody can agree whether that laughter is celebratory or warning. Historians still argue whether glyph-based scripts in the Amazon ever formed a full-fledged writing system or remained symbolic. You breathe in the mingled scent of wet bark and golden dust, feeling the river's pulse in your own veins. The canoe rocks gently, a lullaby sung by water against wood. You sense that each bend, each tributary, hides more layers of history and mystery pieced together by pollen-streaked maps, its flickering sonar echoes, and the ecstatic testimonies of night-blind dreamers. 3 hours ago, you were stumbling on forest floors. Now, you're a stowaway traveling ancient waterways that carried not just water, but civilizations themselves. And just as you're about to push off again, a sudden whoosh sends spray across. Your face part crocodile-sized fish lunging, part over-enthusiastic river spirit testing your reflexes. You grip your paddle as if your life depends on it, because, well, it might. Joke number 3. Next time, remember your poncho war at least. Pack a fish flashlight, refreshed and jittery. You haul yourself back into the canoe and brace for the next leg of the journey. The river's first light taught you more than facts about volume and velocity. It seeped into your marrow. A living reminder that in the Amazon, water and myth flow as one, blurring the line between what's known and what lingers just out of reach beneath the surface. You slip away from the river's lullaby, forging a narrow trail marked by buzz of cicadas and slick roots as thick as anacondas. The forest light dims beneath the vaulted canopy until it feels like twilight even at midday. Your eyes adjust, and you almost miss the first whisper susurrus so soft you think it's the wind. But it isn't. Ahead, half buried in a tangle of bromeliads, you spot a ring of stones. Each monolith more ancient than the oldest memory you can summon. Moonlight tore what passes for it, in the half-shade glints, off like in smeared surfaces, revealing spirals and concentric circles carved with meticulous care. You crouch beside the largest rock, fingertips grazing milky quartz inlays that pulse with a faint glow. As your hand settles into a spiral groove, the murmur becomes clearer. Low, rhythmic intonations that echo like distant voices chanting at a cathedral. Joke number 1. If these stones start demanding a cover charge, at least their ambiance will be worth it. You lean closer, and the murmurs coalesce into syllables you don't recognize, but feel lodged in your subconscious. Like dreams, you almost remember, upon waking. Local historians tell us that rock art sites in the Amazon date back at least 6,000 years, offering glimpses of the region's earliest shamans and ceremonial rites. Archaeologists have documented petroglyphs depicting turtles, caimans, and humanoid figures etched into outcrops along the Rio Negro basin, emphasizing the cultural depth of pre-Columbian societies here. Fossilized pigments and tool marks confirm these carvings weren't casual doodles but integral to rituals that bound community and cosmos. Mainstream fact. Yet fringe lore takes this further. Legend says meteorites once rained down on this clearing, fragments of starborn rock that hum when cooled by nocturnal breezes. Shamans claimed these fallen sky stones held cosmic memory, whispering ancestral knowledge to anyone brave enough to listen. Some even swore they heard maps to hidden chambers shimmering beneath the jungle floor, though repeated expeditions turned up nothing but tangled root sand, occasionally a half-buried obsidian arrowhead. Historians still argue whether these tales reflect genuine celestial events or grew from campfire exaggerations that thrived in the rainforest's shadowed hush. The air here tastes electric, charged with humidity and a subtle temps of ozone, as if you're standing on the cusp between earth and sky. Mosquitoes circle your headlamp's halo, drawing a soft scratch on your neck that you can't ignore. You chide yourself. Joke number 2. Next time, You'll pack your bug net and an industrial-strength repellent. But in this moment, the discomfort feels worth it. You're listening to stones older than the pyramids of Egypt, murmuring secrets, long forgotten by time. You stand and circle the ring, tracing pathways carved between monoliths like spokes on a cosmic wheel. Vines hang in green curtains, and as you part them, the whispering intensifies, as though you're entering a sacred vestibule. A sudden drop in temperature makes gooseflesh rise on your arms unexpected in this oven of greenery. You glance at the sky through a break in leaves. Shafts of moonlight pierce the foliage, striking quartz veins that erupt in pale luminescence. It's like the stones are specters, awakened only under lunar blessing. Fringe accounts claim shamans timed their rites to coincide with specific lunar phases, convinced the stones would divulge different secrets each month. Historians still argue whether pre-Columbian Amazonian faith systems tracked lunar cycles as precisely as Mesoamerican calendars, or if that's a projection of our math-obsessed modern minds. A hush falls, inviting you to place an ear against the largest monolith. You obey, and faint buzzes morph into broken words in an archaic dialect, phrases that loop in repetitions like a chant. Seek the hidden roots, heed the water's path, guard the pulse of life. You gasp, heart racing, because the words feel like instructions you're supposed to follow. The voice is neither male nor female, young nor old. It's impossible to attribute a human identity. You step back, adrenaline spiking as the chant dissolves into the ambient hum of insects in the dim glow. You notice tiny carvings at the base of each stone, bird-like figures with outstretched wings. You recall the feathered prophecy from the Makaztani glyphs woven into plumage, recounting creation myths. Maybe these stones and those feathers share a language, a code inscribed across earth, wind, and living flesh. It pricks your imagination. What if these rocks formed part of a giant communicative network, each site echoing the others in whispered dialogue? Mainstream scholars caution against jumping to conclusions, insisting the carvings are decorative or territorial markers. Historians still argue whether Amazonian rock art served purely aesthetic functions or constituted complex systems of written communication. You kneel to examine the soil around the stones and unearth shards of broken pottery, stained with red ochre. Patterns swirl across the fragments, zigzags that mirrored the petroglyph spirals. A colleague once told you that ceramic pieces in this region often date between 500 and 2,000 years old, signaling waves of migration and evolving artistic traditions. Some of these shards bear residue of hallucinogenic brews used in initiation rites, hinting at ceremonies that blurred lines between material world and spirit realm. The whisper returns, softer now, more intimate, like someone leaning in to share a confidant's secret. You press your ear once more, and it spells out a warning. Beware the river's edge, when gold glimmers like nefarious fire. Your mind flits back to the cursed gold dust on the sandbar. Coincidence? Paranoia. Or a deliberate puzzle piece dropped by some ancestor wishing to protect future wanderers from greed's lure. Joke number 3. Maybe the stones just want to keep their gold for themselves, after all. Who needs treasure hunters loitering all night? Moonlight wanes as clouds drift overhead, and the murmuring dies into silence. You stand, dripping sweat and wonder, aware of a trail leading away from the stone ring, overgrown but visible. Each step on that path will take you deeper into wilderness and legend, guided by cryptic instructions carved in rock and whispered in your ear. You forge onward, knowing that some secrets the stones guard may reshape everything you thought you'd understood about the Amazon's ancient past, your role within its storied labyrinth. You press deeper into the swamp, the forest floor turning spongy and muggy beneath your boots, like an ever-shifting waterbed that refuses to let you relax. Humidity so thick it feels like you're breathing soup clings to your lungs above you. Vines sway without wind, draping ghostly curtains that part at your approach. Each step forward crunches through rotting leaves and half-decayed trunks sinking into the mire. Your flashlight beam cuts through the gloom, illuminating glistening fungal webs and snapping twigs that echo like distant risks. Joke number 1. If only your GPS came with a Make Swamp Less Swampy button, a low hiss makes you freeze. You remember the stone's warning, beware the river's edge when gold glimmers like nefarious fire and your skin prickles. The path narrows until it hugs the edge of a broad watercourse, opaque with tannin-stained water. Something coils beneath the surface, bulging the dark liquid before slipping away with barely a ripple. You swallow, recalling that green anacondas, the world's heaviest snakes, can exceed 30 feet in length and weigh more than a grand piano. You hope that snake hasn't mistaken you for a piano tuner. The local guide who sold you this route warned of the serpent's guardian. A colossal anaconda, worshipped by vanished tribes as the protector of a sunken temple. Fringe mythology claims the beast was once chained by priest kings and wore golden shackles along its scales. Some old-timers even swear its hisses could mimic human speech, issuing commands to intruders in a tongue no outsider could understand. Mainstream biologists scoff, insisting the snake's hiss is just a respiratory escape valve, nature's crude speaker system. Historians still argue whether those vine-covered shackles existed, or are simply campfire exaggerations born from glints of mica on old snakeskins. You edge forward, balancing on half-rooted planks, forming a makeshift boardwalk, each creak beneath your weight sending shivers up your spine. A chorus of dripping water and distant croaks fills the air. The pungent scent of decaying vegetation mixes with a faint, metallic aroma. Those the remnants of ancient shackles, or just your imagination fueled by too many horror stories. You grit your teeth and press on, flashlights scanning for reflective surfaces. Suddenly, in the far corner of your beam, two yellow eyes stare back, impossibly large, catching the glint of your light like ancient sentinels. You freeze, heart hammering, convinced they'll vanish the moment you blink. Joke number 2. You really should have charged your batteries before setting off. The eyes don't disappear. Instead, a massive coil emerges, scales the size of dinner plates, shifting in rippling waves as the snake lifts its head. Water cascades from its flanks, sending tremors through the plank. Breath catches in your throat as you take in the creature's girth beyond any natural proportion. You back away slowly, memorizing every pattern on its scales, which shimmer like wet obsidian flecked with gold. For a heartbeat, all sound ceases. Your flashlights hum the swamp's chorus, your own breath nothing but a pregnant pause. Then a soft hiss reverberates, sounding almost like a whisper. Turn back. You jam your palm against a post, steadying yourself. Every survival rule in you screams to flee, but curiosity and, maybe a morbid sense of duty anchors your feet. Once, you heard a story of a daring explorer who offered the anaconda a goat in exchange for safe passage. And the snake accepted, dragging the bleeding sacrifice beneath murky water. Fringe storytellers claim survivors saw the beast cocoon itself, around the drowned temple, curling protectively like a colossal Ouroboros. Historians still argue whether such rituals existed or if early colonial accounts conflated jaguars and large snakes into a single mythic monster to terrify would-be settlers. The snake's tongue flickers, tasting the humid air. You inhale the dank scent of peat and predator breath, an odd combination of musk, mud, and something you can't quite name, something mineral and sacred. You crouch lower, heart in your throat, as the flashlight beam lands on a half-ruined stone wall, half-submerged in the water. Moss and algae lap its surface, but you recognize carved reliefs, coiled serpents encircling a triangular doorway. This must be the fabled lost temple, swallowed by the swamp centuries ago. You step closer, water lapping at your ankles, and can't resist brushing your fingertips across raised lines. Gnarled carvings depict priests leading bananas, surely a tribute to the forest god's Toward, the snake deity. Joke number 3. If jelly was its favorite offering, you're fresh out. The anaconda shifts, sliding along the temple wall with the grace of silk draping a statue. Each undulation seems deliberate, as if guiding you toward an entrance too narrow for its bulk. You crouch and peer inside the triangular portal. Dim bioluminescent fungi cling to cracks in the stone, casting a greenish glow on a damp corridor sloping into darkness. You can almost hear chanting from beyond, low and sonorous, blending with the swamp's chorus. Fragments of pottery litter the floor. Red and black geometric patterns match to shards you found at the Whispering Stones. It suggests a forgotten network of worship sites dedicated to serpent guardians scattered across the basin. Historians still argue whether this network served as trade routes, cloaked in religion, or functioned purely as sacred sites for communal gatherings. A sudden splash behind you turns your head. The snake's eyes lock onto yours once more, unnervingly intelligent. You wonder if it is judging your trespass, weighing your intentions. You recall the shaman's echo you chased back in the forest depths, that voice urging you to guard the pulse of life. Perhaps the anaconda itself embodies that directive, keeping the temple from greedy hands. The snake lowers its head, nostrils flaring, inviting you to make a choice: enter or retreat. You swallow past a lump of anxiety, pulse roaring as your flashlight beam trembles with your hand. You step inside. The corridor narrows, water sloshing at knee height. Your shirt clings to you like second skin, droplets sliding down your spine. Fungal spores drift in the beam, creating a smoky haze. Every sluice of water echoes differently, haunting the silence with uncanny rhythms. Light from outside recedes, swallowed by the slick walls. You can't see the outside world anymore, just the tunnel, the dripping ceiling, and the faint thrum of the snake's heartbeat from behind. Your mind drifts to scholarly debates you ignore at your own risk. Does serpent worship in the Amazon derive from actual ecological reverence or represent syncretic echoes of old world myths introduced by missionary accounts? Could this temple be the missing link, physical proof of a homegrown belief system as ancient and intricate as the Inca sun cult? A distant glow appears ahead. You trudge forward, water sloshing, until you step into a cathedral-like chamber. Massive stone pillars carved to resemble anacondas rise on either side, mouths agape, supporting a moss-laden ceiling. At the center stands a jade altar, triangular shards littering its surface like fallen teeth. You run a finger along one serpent's scale, feeling its cold solidity. In the muted glow, the anaconda slides in behind you, though you don't dare look back. Its presence is comforting now, as though it stands vigil over something sacred or courage, perhaps, or a pact you've unwittingly made. You crouch at the altar, brushing away silt to reveal etched runes. Only the curious and respectful may walk beyond. A draft stirs behind you, carrying that metallic scent once more. You rise, flashlight trembling, resolving to explore deeper, yet humbling yourself before the serpent's guardian. The snake's hiss resonates like an invitation or a reminder that some doors open only for those who tread lightly. You take a deep breath, to the damp air, a cocktail of earth and legend, and step past the altar into darkness, guided by the soft, protective gaze of the colossal anaconda at your back. The chamber's silence follows you like a waiting breath as you edge past the jade altar and into a narrowing corridor slick with moisture. Every squelch of your boots reverberates off the walls, only to return as a distant thump your footsteps, multiplied into ghostly company. Dripping leaks punctuate the hush, each drop sounding like a reluctant tap on a hollow drum. You pause, pressing your palm against the cool stone, tasting the metallic temps of ancient iron oxide seeping through the cracks. Joke number 1. If only this place had restrooms, nature's call feels extra dramatic when you're underground with a giant snake guardian at your back. Ahead, a faint hum begins, almost indistinguishable from your own pulse. You step forward, and it flares into a sonorous whisper, syllables curling around you in slow arcs. Trima. The voice pulses through the corridor, echoing off jagged stones like a celestial megaphone. It's neither male nor female, more like a sigh, stretched into speech. Local lore speaks of the shaman's echo, an auditory phenomenon preserved by the temple's anomalous acoustics, said to carry prayers directly to forest spirits. Fringe researchers claim these stone tunnels were purposely carved as giant resonators, capturing solar vibrations at dawn and transforming them into voices from beyond. Historians still argue whether this acoustic design is deliberate ritual architecture or a spectacular accident of geology. Your flashlight's beam trembles as you round the curve, revealing a circular chamber lined with basalt pillars, polished by centuries of dripping water. At the center, a shallow pool of black water reflects the flicker of your lamp. And from its still surface rises the echo stronger now, as if the pool itself speaks. You crouch beside it, mesmerized as ripples distort the voice into a dozen overlapping tones. The gentle admonition of a teacher, it's the urgent command of a guardian, the lament of a soul unclaimed by death. You dip a fingertip in the water, cold enough to steal your breath away. The sting jolts you back. Joke number 2. Never underestimate how shocking cold water can be when you're trying to commune with dead. Shaman scholars note that earthen mounds and ceremonial centers in the Amazon reach back over 2,000 years, serving as communal hubs for rituals and governance. Acoustic archaeology shows that some of these spaces have remarkable sound-focusing properties, channeling voices from distant chambers to a single amplified point. Mainstream experts argue this effect may have been known and harnessed by societies, though they caution that attributing supernatural intention risks overshadowing practical architectural brilliance. Historians still debate whether these design choices were primarily symbolic or born of functional community needs, like gathering hundreds of villagers for rites without modern amplification. Mainstream fact: you stand tracing damp footprints on the flagstones and follow the echo's winding path deeper into the earth. The walls narrow again, forcing you to twist sideways, and your snake guardian coils in the shadows, invisible but unmistakable. The hiss of its breath mingles with the water's murmur until you can't tell where predator ends and echo begins. A sudden gust of air stirs overhead, carrying the scent of smoked tobacco, unlikely here, dusty as everything else. Edge of legend stories speak of a wandering spirit of a powerful shaman who continues to roam these halls, tasting each breath for offerings left by the curious. Fringe shamans believe the spirit demands tobacco and jaguar claws as tribute. Mainstream archaeologists shrugged, calling it a ritual leftover or misinterpreted residue. Historians still argue whether such votive traditions existed here, or they evolved much later under missionary influence. Your flashlight illuminates a low arch opening into a vast grotto. Bioluminescent mold creeps across walls like painted veins, casting the place in a ghostly aquamarine glow. You blink, half expecting the dripping stones to glisten like wet hair in moonlight. At the center stands a weathered stone thrown backrest. Shaped like an upturned leaf, its seat carved with spirals matching the whispering stones you found earlier. It's easy to imagine a shaman sitting here, voice amplified through these tunnels, instructing the community on spiritual matters, or perhaps incanting protective charms to repel invaders. Joke number 3. Hope you're not lactose intolerant. Because this chair is full of ancient drool. You step onto the throne's dais, and the echo swells. Words tumble through the grotto. Pathfinder, healer, keepers of life. The voice slows, each descriptor weighted with significance, as though outlining the virtues required to proceed. Beneath the dais, you notice a partially hidden trapdoor ringed by leaf motifs. Brushing away mossy growth, you reveal rusted hinges and a carved inscription. Those who see with heart may descend. You glance back at the water pool in the previous chamber, recalling how deep it felt. Could this plunge lead to the heart of the temple, where the original rituals were performed? Local oral traditions reference an underground chamber called the shaman's sanctum, believed to contain sacred relics, gourd rattles, bone flutes, and painted masks used in trance ceremonies. Fringe investigators claim that those relics include a crystalline skull used to focus sound waves into tangible visions. Skeptics dismiss the skull as a natural quartz formation miscast by overzealous explorers. Historians still argue whether shamanic paraphernalia survived the tropical environment at all, or if everything was looted centuries ago. By treasure hunters, you kneel and pry the trapdoor open. A waft of stale air rises, carrying flecks of dust that swirl in your flashlight beam like tiny phantoms. Below, a ladder carved from a single kapok tree trunk descends into pitch-black gloom. You hesitate, hand on the first rung, scanning the chamber overhead for your snake guide. In response, distant slithering echoes down the shaft, whether reassurance or warning, you can't tell. With a steadying breath, you grip the ladder and begin your descent, feeling the cool wood shift. Under your fingertips, each rung brings you closer to something unseen, a place where earth, architecture, and the living spirit of a shaman converge. You wonder what revelations await a library of auditory memory preserved in stone? Perhaps, or the final resting place of a spiritual leader whose voice stitched together communities. Historians still argue whether shamanic authority in the Amazon derived from hereditary lines, learned apprenticeships, or direct cosmic calling. Whatever you uncover beneath these stones, you know it will rewrite a fragment of history you thought cemented. The ladder ends at a circular door carved with interlocking serpent siblings to the anaconda you left above. With a gentle push, the door swings open, revealing a chamber bathed in a preternatural glow. The echo drops away for an instant, replaced by a serene silence that feels like stepping into a held breath. Ahead, a stone dais rises, and on it rests a conch shell trumpet, its surface etched with star maps and spiral patterns. Cross the chamber, guided by an almost compulsive certainty, and lift the trumpet to your lips. The moment you blow, though, softly, the chamber resonates with a harmonic overtone so pure it sends shivers down your spine. The echo returns, layered now with new phrases. Guide, protect, awaken. You exhale, heart racing, aware that a shaman's legacy is flowing through you, a voice unbound by death. You place the conch back on its dais, gratitude swelling in your chest. Above you, steps of carved stone curve toward a narrow slit of light far above. It's time to return, armed with the echo's final gift. A voice that bridges past and present. A call to safeguard the Amazon stories. As you ascend, each step hums with the resonance of the shaman's echo, carrying you. upward toward an outside world forever changed by what you've heard and felt in the deep, wordless shrine beneath the swamp. You emerge from the temple's slitted light into the swamp's humid embrace, the echo of the conch still trembling in your bones. Each breath feels fuller now, as though your lungs carry the weight of ancient chants. The anaconda guardian retreats silently back into the murk, its enormous form dissolving into ripples. You shake off droplets of sweat and water, stepping onto a narrow causeway that winds toward drier ground. Fern fronds brush your forearms, and the air tastes of mildew and opportunity because you're drawn by whispers of a settlement that simply vanished. Local guides speak of a village called Yaraku, once bustling with fishermen and clay potters, abandoned overnight without a single soul in sight. You follow cracked earthen roads, half swallowed by grass, where broken clay pots litter the roadside like forgotten relics of someone else's misfortune. Joke number 1. At least these villagers mastered pottery maybe. They'd make you a bowl to catch your own sweat. Distant songbirds call in disjointed duets as you skirt the rutted track. Sunlight flickers through the canopy, spotlighting remnants of wattle and daub walls no taller than knee-high. You kneel beside a collapsed hearth, its blackened stones arranged in a neat circle as if someone left mid-roast. The air around it is oddly still, devoid of the usual buzz of insects. You press your palm against the mortar and feel a faint warmth, though it's been centuries since fire burned here. Fringe lore claims those hearths were enchanted to keep embers alive indefinitely. It's flickering only for the right kind of wanderer, though. Nobody's sure if that's myth or a campfire's creative storytelling fuel. Historians still argue whether Amazonian hearths used special fungus-infused bricks to retain heat, or if that's just an excuse for failing to get a good campfire going. You stand and stroll deeper into the clearing, where wooden posts lean like soggy matchsticks. At the center, you spot a stone marker set on its side, covered in moss and lichen. Rubbing off a patch, you reveal a carved figure, clutching a fish and a cluster of maize symbols of sustenance and prophecy. Mainstream archaeological surveys confirm that pre-Columbian Amazonian societies cultivated manioc, maize, and sweet potato in raised fields to manage seasonal, flooding ingenious horticultural feats that predate European contact by centuries. Mainstream fact, those same surveys hint at the presence of dozens of small villages interconnected by canoe paths, painting a picture of a populous, networked region rather than an uninhabited wilderness. You trace the glyphs' lines, noticing a strange irregularity spiral tucked behind the fish's tail, echoing those whispering stones back by the river. You recall how the stones urged you to heed the water's path. Now it seems those messages extend to this very clearing. Water, life, and memory entwined. You wander to where the old canal once ran, a shallow trench half filled with mossy water. The canal's banks seem to have been reinforced by rough-hewn logs, now rotting into the mud. Fringe cartographers plotting from aerial LiDAR data have mapped such canals, suggesting an entire irrigation system more advanced than anyone credited to Amazonian communities. Historians still argue whether these earthworks were designed for sustenance or served ceremonial purposes tied to water and fertility. A sudden rustle in the canopy draws your gaze upward. A lone macaw circles overhead, its plumage vivid against green shadows. You remember the feathered prophecy from Section 7, still to come, the one about macaw plumage encoding oracular messages. Except right now, this bird squawks twice before, vanishing behind leaves like a celestial traffic cop ushering you to the next secret. You smirk. Birds have lousy directions but killer fashion sense. Joke number 2. Maybe this macaw knows it's a village's secret exit. You follow faded footprints in the loamy soil, too small for peccaries, too precise for tapirs. So they lead to a cluster of huts with no sign of life. No bowls or hammocks. Nothing to suggest where the people went. Everything is intact, right down to woven fiber mats rolled beside deserted doorways. Each mat bears geometric patterns matching those on pottery shards you found at the Whispering Stones. Could the same artisans have carved those spirals and woven these rugs? You crouch and inhale the scent of sun-baked fibers, tinged with dust and abandonment. Strange to think that an entire community's children's laughter, its nightly conversations, the scent of cassava cooking, vanished as though scooped away by an unseen hand. You edge closer to a low mound, where broken figurines and clay idols are strewn. One small effigy depicts a figure with a bird's beak and human limbs, holding twin rattles. Locals insist these idols were meant to summon avian spirits for rain-making ceremonies. Fringe anthropologists claim the rattles were tuned to mimic thunder, a sort of ancient weather, apshu, shake one in the air. And sure enough, it produces a hollow clatter like distant raindrops. Historians still argue whether rain-making rituals in the Amazon predate documented Inca ceremonies or developed independently within rainforest cultures. A sudden breeze sends leaves tumbling, teasing your senses. Catch a whiff of tobacco echoes. Again of the shaman's sanctum, or perhaps villagers left offerings here. Scrawled faintly on a wall is a single glyph. 2 parallel lines crossed by 3 shorter ones. You brush away grime and wonder if it's a Talia countdown. Or maybe a signer's mark predicting 5 nights until something happens. Fringe readers suggest it was a lunar calendar, each line a moon phase, counting down to an eclipse believed to carry souls to the river. Historians still argue whether pictographic records in Amazonian villages tracked celestial events or focused solely on agricultural cycles. Your stomach grumbles. Nature's reminder that you skipped lunch for the promise of undiscovered ghosts. You rummage in your pack and find dried plantain chips, cracking one open to swallow the salty sweetness. Joke number 3. Gourmet dining, Rainforest Edition. You practice mindful chewing, crisp echoing in the hushed clearing, imagining villagers. Once did the same as they planned festivals under star-speckled skies. Eyeing the canal's edge, you crouch beside smooth stones inscribed with faint symbols. One resembles a hand with 5 splayed fingers, another a crescent moon. Hand over both, half expecting a chill or a glow. Instead, a tremor runs through the ground, a whisper of movement that fades before you realize it happened. Whether it was an earthquake's decayed echo or a trick of your senses, you can't say. What you do know is that the forest feels alive. Here in a different way, as though the village's pulse lingers in the soil. Ready to stir if called upon, you rise and scan the horizon, treetops swaying in a sudden gust. You notice a faint plume of smoke rising far off, too sweet for wildfire and too thin for a beacon fire. Could that be someone else, another explorer, or locals returning? The plume suggests life, a spark of continuity amid disappearance. Gather your finds, a shard of pottery etched with a birdman, a scrap of woven mat, and a single clay idol. Each piece feels like a confession from the vanished fragments pleading to be heard. You tuck them into your pack, cushioning them against further loss. Standing at the edge of the clearing, you look back at the silent huts, at the hearth where embers should glow. You wonder, did the people ascend into canoes and drift away at dawn, guided by river spirits? Did a visionary leader enact a mass migration ritual, moving everyone overnight to evade some unseen threat? Historians still argue whether such village-wide disappearances stemmed from warfare, disease, or ritual purification driven by shamanic decree. Theories spin in your mind like dust motes in a shaft of light. But no single answer satisfies the hush that envelops this place. You step onto the canal's muddy bank and trace it downstream, as though the water might whisper clues if you listen. Your boots sink slightly, then pull free, carrying you onward. The clearing recedes behind you, but its emptiness stays woven into your thoughts, a riddle you carry like a talisman. Ahead, the forest hums with life, offering new paths and fresh enigmas. And you trudge onward, guided by an unspoken promise that in every vanished village, the stories endure, waiting for someone braver, foolhardy enough to piece them back together. Section 7, you climb out of the canal's muddy embrace and step onto firmer ground. Greeted by a cacophony of scarlet macaws wheeling overhead. Their garrulous squawks slice through the humid air like brightly colored splashes of paint on a dripping canvas. You pause, craning your neck as one macaw arcs low, talons raking at the air before banking skyward. Its feathers glow like embers, each plume a deliberate brushstroke of crimson, gold, and sapphire. Joke number 1. If the rainforest had a fashion week, these guys would be on the runway. Just try not to trip over your own feet while staring up at them. Local indigenous communities have prized macaw feathers for millennia, using them in ceremonial headdresses and trading them as valuable currency across vast riverine networks. Historical records from early colonial chroniclers note that these feathers traveled as far north as Central America, woven into the regalia of Mayan nobility mainstream. Fact, you can almost smell the musky sweetness of the feathers when boiled for dye, an aroma blending acidic resin and earthy tones that linger on fingertips long after you let go of the plume. One macaw lands on a twisted vine a few paces away, cocking its head as if sizing you up. You step forward slowly, holding out a gloved hand. It flutters into your grasp with surprising gentleness, tightening its grip on your glove with scaly toes. You marvel at the feather shafts, striated lines radiating from the quill-like pulses of energy. Closer inspection reveals tiny notches and color gradations that form patterns almost glyphic in their precision. Fringe lore suggests these patterns encode prophecies, predetermined by shamans who bred generations of macaws to carry secret messages to future apprentices. Historians still argue whether such genetic selections occurred or if shamans simply read meaning into natural plumage variation. You sit on a mossy boulder and lay the macaw across your outstretched knees, its light filtering through the canopy and illuminating the feather's underside. The blue tips shimmer like sapphires dipped in sunlight, then fade into turquoise bands that trace arcs across each feather. You trace one arc with a fingernail, feeling a slight ridge where pigment pools more densely. You imagine laborious dyeing, techniques boiling feathers in pots of crushed berries or mineral salts to heighten contrast, then passing them along ceremonial lines as coded scrolls. Joke number 2. These parrots are the original literate fonts. Move over. Comic Sans. As you arrange the feathers side by side, you recognize recurring symbols. A spiral that mirrors the whispering stones, a zigzag echoing the river's currents, and a triad of dots that calls back to the pottery fragments in the vanished village. It's like someone plucked snippets from every site you've explored and wove them into living tapestries. Your pulse accelerates. If these patterns truly form a prophecy, it could unite the temple, the stones, and the village under a single narrative. One. It's been whispered beneath this forest canopy for centuries. You recall that shamans in Upper Xingu still conduct feather reading ceremonies during solstice celebrations, believing that macaws serve as intermediaries between sky and earth. Fringe researchers claim they've recorded chanting sessions where villagers unravel feather patterns like scrolls, each hue triggering a line of prophecy. Observations include descriptions of drought predictions, harvest forecasts, and warnings of disease outbreaks, all delivered in rhythmic recitations under candlelit malokas. Skeptical scholars caution these are retrospective interpretations, shaped by modern ethnographies eager for exotic revelations. Historians still argue whether feather divination reflects ancient practice or post-contact syncretism influenced by missionary notebooks. You heft the macabre gently and stand, following a narrow animal trail that winds toward a sunlit clearing. Each step kicks up a cloud of pollen that tangles in your hair and fills your nostrils with a faintly sweet perfume. Birds chat in the mid, canopy toucans jabbering in low tones, parakeets chattering like old friends catching up. The air thrums, with life making you hyper-aware of every breath, every heartbeat. Somewhere ahead, lies the key to decoding the prophecy embedded in these feathers. In the clearing, a stone pedestal half buried in vines awaits. It stands no higher than your waist, topped by a shallow bowl carved from basalt. The bowl's surface bears radial grooves that align perfectly with the feather patterns. You discovered 3 deep furrows that echoed the triad of dots and 2 intersecting lines matching the zigzag. You lay the macaw across the pedestal, feathers fanning out like a living mandala. For a moment, nothing happens except the wind stirring leaves overhead, sounding like whispered exclamations of anticipation. Then you notice the ground trembling just a tremor underfoot, as if the forest itself is clearing its throat. Leaves flutter and a rivulet of water leaks from a crack in the pedestal, pooling around the bowl. You lean in, mesmerized, as droplets ripple outward and distort the feather reflections. Colors shimmer and shift, rearranging into sequences: red, gold, blue, red, blue, red, gold. You read them as syllables: Atasha, Shatari, Rinasu. The sequence loops, each permutation echoing different harmonies. You lightheartedly mutter that at least the feathers didn't break into sequence mid-prophecy. Despite the wonder, a sliver of doubt tugs at your mind. Fringe ethnographies claim that macaw genetics yield natural color morphisms, called feather cryptograms, patterns evolutionary biologists haven't fully explained. Some suggest these markings communicate health status or species lineage, a purely ecological function misread as prophetic code by introverted anthropologists. Historians still argue whether color patterns held symbolic cultural significance. Beyond decorative display, as you record the syllables on a scrap of parchment, you sense a presence behind you. The anaconda's shadow glides across the clearing's mossy stones, silent yet watchful. Its yellow eyes gleam with patient intelligence, as though the temple guardian has been expecting you all along. You shiver, not from cold, but from recognition. The snake's coils mimic the spiral glyphs in the feathers, and its embrace around the temple entrance recalls the wavy lines through which the macaw patterns flow. You stand at the nexus of prophecy, spirit, and flesh, realizing that every element here is part of an interwoven story. You close your eyes and replay the feather sequence in your mind. Atasha corresponds to the spiral sites. Shatari hints at the river's hidden temples. Rinasu aligns with the vanished settlement's calendar glyphs. It's a triadic prophecy that speaks of guardianship, spirals, transition water, and renewal community. You whisper, each syllable feeling them vibrate on your tongue like incantations. Joke number 3. Try ordering takeout with Rinasu and see how long before the restaurant hangs up. A shaft of sunlight pierces the canopy, illuminating the feathers. In a single blaze, the patterns solidify, and you swear the syllables coalesce into a cohesive phrase that rolls across your consciousness. Guard the pulse, flow with time, awaken home. You exhale, heart pounding not just at the discovery, but at the weight of stewardship it demands. A prophecy isn't about finding lost treasure. It's a mandate to protect the forest's living tapestry, to channel its energy through water, stone, okay? And community.you gently lift the macaw and cradle it against your chest, feeling its heartbeat sync with your own. The anaconda uncoils and slithers away, vanishing into the brush. The pedestal still drips, a soft metronome you carry with you as you retrace your steps out of the clearing. Each feather now feels like a petition, a plea from ancestors cloaked in color, urging you to heed the pulse of the Amazon. You emerge onto a broader trail, forest opening to views of distant hills. Above you, macaws wheel in synchronized arcs, as if offering a final salute. You tuck the feathers into a canvas map case, determined to share the prophecy, but only with those who would respect its call. The forest hums around you, urging you onward, confident that someone has heard its plea. You push through a thicket of palms and descend to a broad lagoon, so still it resembles molten glass. The air here tastes of wet stone and algae, heavy with the scent of ancient mud and blossoming water lilies. Your boots sink into soft silt at the water's edge, sending up faint plumes of clay that drift like miniature geysers. Above you, vine-entwined columns rise from the depths, their mirrored surfaces catching stray sunbeams. Joke number 1. If only you'd brought a towel to wipe, drool, or dry your socks when this adventure finally ends. Stepping gingerly into ankle-deep water, you feel cool ripples circle around your ankles, tugging at your sense of balance. Ahead, the half-submerged temple looms, its basalt walls polished by centuries of current into glossy panels that reflect clouds and foliage like giant wandering mirrors. Archaeologists have unearthed fragments of polished specular hematite mirrors in pre-Columbian Amazonian sites used by shamans for divination and self-reflection during ceremonies. Mainstream fact. You imagine priests gazing into these dark surfaces to commune with spirits, or nobles using them to flash a knowing wink across the riverbank. Either way, it's decidedly more impressive than your bathroom mirror's fog-ridden selfies. You skirt a submerged stairway, each step worn smooth by water and time, and catch a glimpse of your own silhouette breaking the perfect reflection. For a heartbeat, you see another figure, second you, moving independently, as if ghost dancing just beneath the surface. Fringe lore holds that these mirrored ruins can trap the souls of those daring enough to step inside, spawning wandering doppelgangers that drift through the jungle at dusk. Nobody's sure if these tales sprang from real disappearances or over-caffeinated guidebooks, but you shiver, halfway hoping this isn't your future. Historians still argue whether ritual mirror pools functioned as portals to ancestor realms, or served purely aesthetic purposes, a display of craftsmanship on par with Inca terrazzo floors. You wade deeper until the water laps at mid-calf. It's cool enough to snap your senses awake. Dragonfly wings skim the surface, leaving fleeting wake lines that distort the temple's reflection like ripples in a dream. You hold perfectly still, peering into the lagoon's black sheen as though it could tell you why the builders chose this spot. There's a hush broken only by distant cicadas and the soft pluck of a dangling root against stone. Joke number 2. If you ever need a rainforest spa, just wade into an ancient mirror temple, mud mask included. Ahead, an arched doorway carved into polished stone beckons. Its frame is inlaid with mica shards that catch stray light, scattering prismatic sparkles across the water. Scholars have documented mica use in Marajora culture artifacts, where reflective fragments adorned pottery and temple facades to create ethereal glints during solstice rituals. Mainstream fact. You cup a hand to shade your eyes, marveling at how the shreds of light dance like fireflies on ancient walls. You step through the arch, water rising to knee height, and a low hum fills the air. It might be your heartbeat echoing off stone, or some hidden resonance engineered into the temple's geometry. Fringe architects claim the builders harnessed acoustic and reflective properties to induce trance states visitors supposedly lost track of time. Guided by shifting reflections and harmonic overtones, historians still argue whether these mirrored chambers were unique ceremonial inventions or regional variants of Old World water temples, first catalogued by missionaries. Inside, the corridor widens into a circular hall where water covers the floor, completely forming a flawless mirror of the domed ceiling overhead. Intricate carvings of coiling serpents and winged figures decorate the vault, their reflections doubled beneath your feet. You crouch, pressing fingertips into the cold water to send concentric rings tumbling outward. In those rings, the carvings twist into new shapes. Winged serpents become feathered jaguars, priests transmute into hummingbirds. This kaleidoscopic vision tickles your brain, making you wonder whether the ancients prized illusion over narration. Joke number 3. Try explaining that filter to your followers. #No filter needed. Straight from 500 CE. As you rise, the shifting reflections shift back into solemn form. But one detail remains, a tiny mosaic inset near the waterline composed of black and white stones. It forms a checkerboard pattern that matches the spiral glyphs you found on the whispering stones. That callback sends a thrill through you, proof that every site is stitched together by a common visual language. You lean closer, water brushing your forearms, and trace the pattern with a fingertip. Immediately, a faint glow flares at the center of the mosaic, as though the temple recognizes your touch. A ripple carries the light across the hall, illuminating a narrow doorway you hadn't noticed. Its lintel carved with 3 crescent moons. The reflection in the water aligns perfectly with the moons, doubling them into a cycle of 6. You recall? The lunar alignments discussed in Section 3's Whispering Stones. The shaman's echo that pulsed strongest under full moons. All these pieces converge, here stone, water, and sound. Historians still argue whether lunar symbolism in Amazonian sacred sites predates Inca moon worship or evolved independently through ecological observation. You step through the newly revealed doorway, water foaming around your thighs as you pass, and enter a small antechamber lined with polished obsidian panels. Each panel reflects back a fragment of your presence, your boots, your flashlight, your wide-eyed expressions scattered like broken mirror shards. At the chamber's heart stands a circular dais raised on a ring of black stone. On it rests a shallow bronze basin filled with iridescent water. When you peer in, the water's surface ripples and then stills, revealing fleeting images. A canoe drifting at dawn, an anaconda coiled around temple pillars, macaws spiraling over vanished huts. It's a montage of your journey so far, a living tapestry of discoveries and dangers. You can almost hear a chorus of voices whispering back your own name, the stones, the snake, the birds, every ally you've encountered offering a silent nod. You lean over the basin, your reflection hovering above the visions. The water cools your cheeks as a droplet splashes against your wrist. In that moment, you understand the temple's true purpose, not to reflect vanity, but to mirror the soul of every pilgrim brave enough to explore its depths. You straighten, feeling a gentle weight on your back, an unseen hand of ancestral approval. Maybe the anaconda's spirit guiding you. Whether this recognition is ecological metaphor or genuine mystical experience, you can't tell. Historians still argue whether Amazonian ritual mirrors grounded communities in a shared identity or served as psychological tools to confront personal fears. You turn to leave the hall, and the mirrored panel nearest you shows a vision of glimmering gold. Dust dancing across Sandan, unmistakable callback to the cursed stream by the rapids. Ahead, that gold dust flickers across the corridor's polished floor, as if welcoming you onward. You smile tiredly, tucking your flashlight back into your pack. The lagoon's entrance corridor yawns before you, reflections rippling under your departing steps. As you emerge into daylight, the Temple of Mirrors slips back into its half-submerged disguise, water swallowing its secrets once again. You stand at the lagoon's rim, chest heaving, watching the mirrored stones vanish under drifting pollen and shifting shadows. The forest hum returns, cadenced by your own pulse. You step onto dry land, leaving behind a place that now feels part of a gallery of reflections, literal and metaphorical, carved into the heart of the Amazon. You slip away from the mirrored temple's glimmering exit and follow a narrow gully where water trickles over black shale, turning the stones into a glossy mosaic underfoot. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet clay and faint metallic tangs, precursors, you hope, of the gold flakes rumored to drift here like suspended stars. Sunlight filters through a lacy canopy of young palms, scattering luminous patterns across the stream's surface as if it's winking at you, a silent promise of hidden treasure. Joke number 1. If only gold actually paid in pizza coupons, you'd be set for life. You crouch at the water's edge, scanning the sandy bed for glints of yellow. You reach into your pack and pull out a battered pan plastic. With faint brand lettering you've erased with too many scrubbings and dump in a handful of gravel. Leaning back, you twist the pan, letting the water swirl free the lighter particles, while the heavier minerals settle. Tiny flecks of mica cluster at the bottom first, catching stray beams and flashing like fireflies. Then, pour after cautious pour, a few motes of genuine gold appear, fat golden pimples against the dark pan. You let out a soft whoa, heart fluttering like a hummingbird's wing beat. This is the reward you came for, the physical echo of a prophecy to flow with time, water. After all, preserves more than reflections, a local miner shows up, emerging from the trees in rubber boots and a broad-brimmed hat. He greets you with a nod and a ramshackle wooden sluice box balanced on his shoulder. He's been panning these waters for decades, claiming the stream fed a tributary of the Madre de Dios River, real hotspot during the late 19th century. Amazon gold rush, when prospectors swarmed here like mosquitoes at a barbecue. Mainstream fact. He swears by his method. Mix local clay powder into the pan to weigh down the sand, then chant a 6-word incantation at dawn to coax the gold out of hiding. Fringe lore says the clay contains pulverized amethyst, the stone of clairvoyance, allowing you to see where the gold gathers. Historians still argue whether such chants and powders derive from indigenous traditions or are modern gimmicks layered on to entrepreneurial showmanship. You watch him work, muscles flexing as he tilts, swirls, and drains. His sluice box rattles with trap silt, and with a practiced motion, he dumps the concentrate into a sieve. He leans forward, blows across the mesh, and the remaining sand falls away, leaving 2 bright grains dancing in the sunlight. Joke number 2. They say a single grain of Amazonian gold is worth your life savings if you're living in monopoly money. You nod, impressed. And for a moment, you wonder if you've stumbled onto the real deal or just a well-rehearsed performance. When you try the clay trick, adding a pinch to your pan, the water turns milky and your heart sinks, no glittering surprises. Instead, you feel a mild tingling in your fingertips, as though the clay's magic is working on your nerves more than on the gold. Fringepreneurs swear the tingling means the gold is there, but refuses to appear until you've proven your worth. You grin, tossing your hair back, and joke number 3. Next time, maybe try the amethyst-infused toothpaste for better luck. You lean against a mossy boulder, watching the miner vanish back into the forest, leaving the sluice box bouncing against the underbrush. You take a breath, tasting the frothy hum of water and insect corrals, and inspect your pan. There it is again, a single golden flake, the size of a grain of rice, shimmering in the thin film of water. You let your fingertips cradle it, marveling at its smooth surface and gentle warm thin, feels impossibly heavy, like a promise compressed into a speck. Night edges toward the gully, and you find a flat rock polished by countless raindrops to serve as your makeshift table. You spread a bit of canvas from your pack and carefully pour your concentrate onto it. Flick by flick, the grains of gold glimmer. You count 6 in total. 6 grains to commemorate the 6 moons in the Mirror Temple's prophecy. It feels poetic, almost mathematically tidy, until you remember that nature rarely aligns with our neat expectations. You pack up and retreat to a fire pit. You discover wedged between palm roots. Logs smolder with pale smoke, lending a ghostly glow that dances across your face. You cautiously place your gold grains on a palm leaf to dry. Then drift into dreamlike reverie, thinking of how the prophecy warned of nefarious fire glimmering like a lure. You swallow hard, uneasy, recalling how the whispered stones cautioned against greed, and how the anaconda's golden flecks on its scales represented divine guardianship more than a treasure trove. The forest around you seems to inhale. Watching, morning light arrives, tinted pink and gold, filtering through moss-draped branches. You jostle awake, heart fluttering as you remember your haul. Cues scramble to the pan's resting spot to find it empty. The gold grains have vanished without trace, as if spirited away by the same spirits that cursed the stream. Only your canvas square bears a wet stain where they once lay. You search the ground frantically, eyes tracing every pebble and leaf. But nothing glitters except the dew on surrounding blades of grass. Panic pricks through your calm ASMR cadence. Had the prophecy of vanishing gold come true? You duck beneath low fronds, following the stream upstream, panning again and again. Gravel returns, glints of mica, but no gold. Each ritual clay, chant, breath is futile. You remind yourself to breathe, to steady your pulse, to remember the prophecy's other mandates. Guard the pulse and awaken home. Perhaps the grains weren't meant to be claimed, only glimpsed. Fringe stories claim that those who steal the gold suffer restless nights filled with phantom wealth, compelled to return the treasure or risk stories of their own disappearances being whispered by the jungle. Historians still argue whether these vanishings stem from elaborate tribal protectiveness or simply from Panor's faulty memories and misplaced grains. Your stomach grumbles, canning you back to mundane needs. You settle on a flat rock and unwrap a tortilla you brought from civilization, smearing it with peanut butter straight from the jar, modern fuel for ancient quests. As you chew, you measure each bite against the memory of gold on your tongue, smooth, metallic, fleeting. You laugh softly. Maybe this tortilla is more dependable treasure than any river's bounty, rubbing peppery grit from your hands. You look out over the stream. Solar filaments dance on swirling eddies, and you sense hidden currents beyond sight water, carrying fragments of stories, bones, seeds, memories. You cup your hands to drink, mindful to boil later, thinking that perhaps the true treasure here isn't metal, but the restless spirit of the Amazon itself, ever flowing, ever renewing, never holding still. You rise, dust off your pants, and shoulder your pack. You whisper the prophecy one last time, voice low. Guard the pulse, flow with time, awaken home. The stream gurgles in reply, as though it understood both the triumph and the vanishing. You step away, boots sinking slightly in the sandy bank, carrying only memories of gold's brief blaze, and perhaps that's enough. The forest beckons onward, confident you've learned its lesson. Some riches shimmer only in the mind and evaporate at dawn, protecting deeper mysteries still waiting downstream. You push your canoe into the churn of rapids, feeling each surge of water rock your balance as though the river itself is testing your resolve. Foam froths around your paddle, whispering over submerged rocks and echoing back as a low, eerie hum that prickles your skin. The air tastes of mineral-rich spray and the faint tims of wet granite. Borrowed from the Andean foothills where the Amazon begins its epic journey. Joke number 1. If you ever need a natural shower, just stand downstream a bit, you'll get exfoliated by the rapids for free as you brace against a towering wave. You remember that these whitewater sections, like the famous Pongo de Monserrat Canyon, were charted by Spanish explorers in the 16th century, who likened the thunderous currents to giant cauldrons boiling under a jungle canopy. Mainstream fact. They navigated these rapids with trembling oars, convinced the river's roar masked more than currents, perhaps the lament of lost souls or warnings to trespassers. You grip your paddle tighter, half expecting to hear voices singing from the foam. Fringe lore insists that at certain dawns, when mist hangs low, forest spirits inhabit the rapids. Their voices rising in mournful dirges heard by few and believed by fewer. Your canoe swerves into a narrow chute, the water's melody crescendoing into what almost sounds like a chorus of whispered notes. You lean in, straining to distinguish individual voices, a child's laugh, a woman's wail, a hushed male whisper entwined with a gurgling riffle. Joke number 2. If the rapids ever start charging admission, at least they've got better acoustics than your last concert venue. You dip one paddle to stabilize, letting the current carry you past jagged boulders carved like ancient monoliths. Their mossy surfaces gleam, and you swear you catch shapes in the lichened serpent scales. Bird wings that mirror motifs from the mirrored temple and serpent shrine you've visited. It feels like the river is stitching every secret you've uncovered into its own tapestry, between foam and eddies. You spot a cluster of stones emerging from the water, their tops etched with faint glyph zigzags, recalling the vanished villages. Pottery and spirals, echoing the whispering stone's carvings. A shiver of recognition runs through you. Could these be markers guiding the lost to safe passage? Fringe cartographers have mapped similar stones along other rapids, suggesting an ancient system of waterborne signposts that directed canoe routes. Historians still argue whether these markers served practical navigation or held ceremonial significance tied to water deities. But either way, they underscore humanity's long dialogue with these wild currents. The rapids open into a calmer stretch, where you drift beneath overhanging vines dripping with blossoms. Their petals fall around you in a delicate shower, each one fleeting as the foam voices. You taste nectar on your lips, possibly from passionflower vines and close. Your eyes letting the floral sweetness mingle with the echoing hum. It's a sensory punctuation, a soft respite before the next symphony of whitewater. You remind yourself, every pause here is as meaningful as the roar. A sudden swell hurls you into a corridor of churning foam that swallows light like a portal to another realm. Your heartbeat thunders in time with the rapids, each splash punctuating a latent melody. You recall the prophecy's second demand: flow with time. Here, time seems fluid, folding and rippling like the water beneath your hull. Fringe musicians once attempted to record these rapids, looping the haunting sounds into ambient tracks that supposedly induced trance states in listeners miles away. Skeptics dismiss the idea as audio pareidolia, our brains craving patterns where none exist. Historians still argue whether these sonic phenomena are deliberate cultural experiences or just nature's random orchestra. You guide your canoe toward a narrow cleft between boulders where the current funnels into a whistle of compressed air and water. The sound rises into a clear, haunting tone that resonates against the canyon walls of sirens, songs stripped of seduction but heavy with warning. You pause, pressing your palm to the stone to feel the vibration, nearly missing the pivot of whitewater that sweeps you sideways. Joke number 3. Note to self, listen carefully, is not the same as stand in the middle of a hammering waterfall. Your damp jacket clings to you as you navigate the final swirl, and suddenly you emerge into a broad pool where the rapids level out. Here, the river's roar softens into a lullaby of ripples, and you drift instead of paddling, catching your breath above you. The sun breaks free, casting golden bands across water that moments ago seemed liquid obsidian. You trace the light as it dances on submerged stones, imagining each glint as a note in the rapid symphony. In the center of the pool, a lone kapok tree root juts from the water, its gnarled limbs like a conductor's baton directing the flow. You lean out, reaching for a low-hanging root, and notice tiny freshwater mussels clinging to its bark. Locals say these mussels open and close in time with the rapid's pitch, as if breathing to the river's rhythm. Fringe naturalists believe the mussels' synchronized clamming may be a response to sound vibrations. A primitive echolocation system. Historians still argue whether these behaviors influenced indigenous fishing techniques or were simply marvels observed and recorded by naturalists. Centuries later, you scoop up a handful of water from the pool and let it trickle through. Your fingers, tasting sediment, carved from granite and Clarith's fingerprint in liquid form. You think of the shards of gold dust you saw shimmering on a sandbar, the vanishing grains that teased you before dawn. Here, the gold may be hidden in currents too strong to hold, slipping through human grasp, much like these rapids resist any permanent dominion. The river is a living archive, preserving stories in every ripple and roar. A heron lands on the distant bank with an elegant splash, its reflection photobombing the rapids' tidy mirror image. It fixes you with a patient stare before unfolding its wings and lifting into the sky, wingspan casting a feathered shadow. You watch it go, imagining its slow-motion flight as another verse in the Amazon's grand composition. You push off toward a river bend where the rapids taper off into smooth waters. The melody softens, echoes fade into the steady heartbeat of the current guiding you downstream. You notice moss-covered stones lining the bank, each one hewn flat like stepping stones. You recognize these from the Anaconda Temple's flooring, identical in shape and texture. Another callback: the temple's guardian and the river's guardian may be cut from the same mythic cloth, woven into serpentine legends across different landscapes, as evening light filters through the leaves. You spot a half-sunken canoe lodged against a rock-hand artifact of some earlier traveler's miscalculation. The wood is waterlogged, a relic claimed by the rapids. You run your hand along its rim, feeling lichen and age-softened oak. Someone else here chased the haunting song and paid a price, another verse in the rapids' tale of lure and loss. Historians still argue whether river accidents in these corridors stemmed from navigational error or rituals to offer vessels as gifts to water spirits. You settle back in your canoe, its arms aching, yet heart full of the rapid's voice. Around you, birdsong resumes, something lighter, less urgent, like a choir of backup singers waiting their cue. You dip your paddle once more, cutting through the pool's glassy surface and into the soft embrace of calmer water. The melody becomes a memory tucked into your bones. A lesson in humility before the river's power. Night approaches, and you follow the water's current toward the next campsite. In your mind, you replay the rapids' haunting chorus, each note a reminder that even in tumult, there is beauty and meaning woven into patterns of stone, foam, and echo. You smile, knowing you've listened to one more layer of the Amazon's endless symphony. You glide into a broad bend where the river slows to a velvety lilt, water dark as ink and smooth as glass. Your paddle's dip is silent, each stroke a brushstroke on this living canvas. On the far bank, half hidden by tangled vines, you spot the crumbling remains of a wooden shack perched atop mossy pilings. Its planks sag under centuries of humidity, and a weathered sign painted in looping script reads Aqui vivio el cartografo. Here lived the cartographer. Joke number 1. If only your GPS could read El Cartografo's location instead of rerouting you through 3 overgrown canoes. You beach your canoe in a shallow cove, its footfalls muffled by spongy moss. The shack's door yawns open, hinges, squealing like startled monkeys. Inside, shafts of slanted light reveal a dusty desk strewn with tattered maps, bound journals, and a battered sextant rusted with age. You pick up a folded chart rendered on goat hide, its lines bleeding where water found purchase. Spidery annotations mark hidden waterfalls, uncharted tributaries, its bizarre symbols tiny compasses with moving needles that twitch in your hand. Fringe legend, says the cartographer, known only as Don Aurelio Delgado. Compasses in his maps, crafted from fragments of meteorites that fell in 1792. The charts pointed toward truth rather than magnetic north. Whether metal from space really courses through the ink veins, nobody can confirm beyond stories passed by hammock-slumbering storytellers. Historians still argue whether Delgado's compasses were scientific marvels or simply clever fakes too. Dazzle would-be financiers. A narrow window frames, dripping vines outside, and a slice of jungle alive with humidity. You lean over the desk and trace faded ink, noticing river courses that twist in impossible loops, paths that defy any known current. According to local lore, Delgado vanished after charting a route that led him to a hidden canyon brimming with glowing fungi and stone bridges suspended over bottomless chasms. Some claim he traded his soul for a cartographer's gift, leaving his body hollowed out beneath a kapok tree. Mainstream explorers, like Charles Marie de la Condamine, did conduct detailed surveys of the Amazon in the mid-18th century, measuring altitude and mapping major tributaries for the first geodesic studies of the continent. Mainstream fact. Yet none recorded these phantom loops Delgado drafted, fueling gossip that he tapped into secret indigenous knowledge whispered in dreams. You spread the goat hide map across a broken floorboard, smoothing wrinkles with the palm of your hand. Where do tributaries meet? Delgado drew a spiraling symbol identical to the ones etched on the whispering stones back in section 3. A thrill shoots through you. It's the same spiral that urged you to seek the hidden roots. Now it seems the cartographer encoded that command into hydrology itself. You tap a trembling finger on the spiral, and joke number 2. If this map demands a password, I hope you don't have to draw with your toes. On a rickety shelf, you discover a leather-bound journal tied with a faded ribbon. The script inside is elegant. Each page dated in the early 1800s and written in Spanish with intermittent Quechua phrases. One entry describes Delgado's encounter with river spirits, who guided his hand as he sketched submerged temples beneath floodwaters. Another laments his frustration when his compass spun wild, as though lost in a magnetic storm conjured by forest magic. The final pages end abruptly. Tonight, I follow the river's voice into perpetual mist. May anyone who finds this remember, maps are alive if you listen. If you close the journal, heart hammering, because it reads like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're living in real time. A breeze drifts through the open doorway, carrying a faint echo of the rapids hum you just left. You remember how that melody shaped itself around every rock and curl of water like a cartographer's sound map. It strikes you that Delgado may have charted waterways by ear, not just eye. Fringe historians propose he used a mechanical ear trumpet to capture the river's frequencies, then translated them into topographical lines. Mainstream academics scoff, insisting that pre-industrial instruments couldn't achieve such fidelity. Historians still argue whether auditory mapping existed outside North Pacific coastal cultures or spread here through transatlantic intellectual exchange. You rise and explore the shack's far corner, where vine-smeared walls revealed a hidden niche. Inside lies a rolled canvas tube sealed with wax. Breaking the seal, you unroll a panoramic mural, a sweeping river vista painted in liquid pigment. The scene includes familiar landmarks, the Serpent Ruins from Section 4, the Temple of Mirrors from Section 8, and even the glimmering sandbar from Section 9, but in the center rests an island you've never seen. Shaped like a jaguar's head, its shoreline sketched in red ochre. You stare, struck that Delgado may have discovered a landform so remote it appears on no modern satellite imagery. Joke number 3. Let's just hope no one named Steve got there first and turned it into a resort. You tuck the mural and map into your pack and step outside. The shack seems to inhale and exhale in the still air, as if acknowledging your presence. The jungle calls birdsong blended with distant drums beckoning you to trace the cartographer's final path. You cast a glance downriver, where a narrow tributary cuts into dense undergrowth, its entrance marked by a mossy arch of roots. There's a flicker of movement beneath the water, could be a tapir cooling off or Delgado's phantom canoe skidding. Across the shallows, your pulse picks up. The goat hide map in your pack seems too warm where your compass flickers, guiding you toward that jaguar island. Before you push off, you pause and brush your hand over the shack's faded sign, Acqui Vivio el Cartografo, wondering if Delgado ever returned to reclaim his life. The journals say he believed maps could bind a person's destiny. But if the river's voice claimed him, perhaps he remains captive in its curves and eddies. Historians still argue whether Delgado's disappearance was voluntary transcendence into legend or a tragic accident masked by myth. You lift your paddle, dipping it into the calm water while the jungle hums swells around you. The map's compass quivers and swings, pointing upriver toward the tributary arch. You settle into the canoe, folding the goat hide chart over your lap. The water embraces the hull, rocking you gently, familiar, comforting, as if the river itself invites you deeper into its cartographic labyrinth. You whisper to the river, "Lead me to the Jaguar Island." And in response, the current stirs, tugging you forward into green shadows and undiscovered geometry. You glide beneath a canopy so thick it's almost midnight, even at dusk. The goat hide map's compass quivering like a firefly in your pack. The tributary narrows until you can touch both banks with outstretched arms, vines brushing your shoulders, as if eager to guide you. Above, the moon breaches the green ceiling, full and swollen, casting silver shafts that dance on glassy water. You pause, balancing your paddle like a conductor's baton, and let the canoe drift into a small clearing edged by braided reeds. Here, dozens of figures gather around a ring of torches. Their bodies are painted in swirling patterns of red and white clay, mirroring the spiral glyphs you've encountered at every sacred site. Women sway in feathered skirts, hoop earrings jingling like distant raindrops, while men beat hollow logs with carved paddles, setting a slow, hypnotic heartbeat. You inhale the sharp scent of burning mahogany and tobacco, and your pulse sinks with the drum-like thumps. Joke number 1. If this was a nightclub, you definitely need better lighting, but the DJ's ancient beats more than make up for it. Local ethnographies note that many Amazonian tribes, including the Quiapo and Yaoalapiti, hold full moon ceremonies to celebrate ripening manioc and renew community bonds, gathering in large malokas, illuminated by moonlight and fire. Mainstream fact. You watch as a matriarch steps forward, her arms raised in a slow arc, chanting syllables you barely recognize. The language shifts mid-song. One moment, familiar Tupi-Guarani phrases. Oh God. Speak, only understood by spirits. Fringe participants whisper that these odd verses weren't sung by humans at all, but channeled through the moon itself. It's a kind of lunar possession granting voices to stones and trees. Historians still argue whether such polyglot chants represent genuine linguistic layering or simply the inventive flair of modern revivalists. You slip off your canoe onto a muddy bank and step barefoot onto soft moss. Each footprint a damp imprint you'll never see under moonlight. The dancers part to let you in, their smiles wide but respectful, as though they've been expecting another seeker. You feel a tingle across your skin as if the clay on your forearms hums in recognition. And you're offered a bowl of frothy brew brewed from fermented cocoa leaves and local herbs. It tastes both bitter and floral, a gentle buzz that warms your chest like a memory you haven't lived yet. Joke number 2. If this moonlit punch doesn't put you to sleep. Nothing will, though you might start hallucinating neon caimans. A tall figure steps into the firelight. A shaman crowned with macaw-loomed headdress, painted eyes staring through you. He raises a gourd rattle studded with tiny zills, and each shake releases a cascade of metallic chimes, twinkling like distant stars. You remember the feather prophecies syllable sata, sha, shadari, rinasawant. Wonder if this rattle carries the same code in sound. The shaman moves to the drum circle, and suddenly the log's bass merges with the zill's shimmer, creating a layered rhythm that vibrates through your sandals into your bones. Some fringe musicologists claim these ceremonies were the world's first psychedelic trance, meant to reshape consciousness through rhythm alone. Skeptics attribute the effect to sensory overload, a trick of firelight and sound, rather than ancient brain hack technology. Historians still argue whether indigenous trance techniques predate shamanic drum use in Siberia or evolved independently right here. You step closer to the ritual center, where a shallow pit has been dug and lined with smooth river stones. Inside, embers burn low, glowing like sleepy embers of a dragon's breath. The shaman begins to sprinkle powdered mica mind from distant highlands into the coals. Sparks erupt, swirling upward in prismatic trails. Locals nod, murmuring that the mica carries messages from the Milky Way, each glitter fragment a fragment of cosmic wisdom. Fringe astrologers insist the mica is literally stardust, delivered by meteor showers that once darkened these skies. Mainstream geologists counter that Amazonian mica deposits come from local metamorphic rocks. Not outer space, but they can't deny the spectacle of those glittering sparks against the moonlit sky. Historians still debate whether ritual uses of mica spread across continents via early trade networks or arose in tandem through parallel invention. Procession begins. Drummers lead a line of dancers through a circular path around the pit, stepping in time so their shadows stretch and shrink like living puppets on a leafy screen. You join the circle, gingerly matching their pace, feeling the earth pulse under your feet. The shaman chants a new phrase, and the crowd echoes it back in a ripple pattern like stones skipping across the lagoon of memory. As you repeat the words, your voice carries on the humid breeze, trailing off into the forest where it merges with cicada choruses. A rogue breeze extinguishes a torch, plunging half the clearing into darkness. For a moment, nothing but moonlight and silvered leaves remain. Joke number 3. If you wanted a dramatic lighting change, you'd just unplug the karaoke machine though, honestly. This moment beats any stage effect. When the torches reignite, no one saw how. Some claim a spirit's playful hand. Shaman's voice softens, and dancers freeze mid-step. He raises a carved wooden staff crowned with a hollowed snake skull. The staff glimmers with resin-coated seeds that reflect torchlight. He plants it in the pit's center and calls out in a voice deep and resonant, Akuamara. The dancers bow, heads touching earth, and the crowd exhales together. In that hush, you sense the forest leaning in, branches trembling with anticipation. Then the shaman smiles, lifts his staff, and the circle erupts into jubilant stomps, releasing weeks of tension in a single heartbeat. You step back, heart pounding, as a woman pours fresh brew into your cupped hands. Each sip is a soft electric surge, connecting you to this moment and every moonlit ceremony ever held under the Amazon's canopy. You glance upward. Clouds drift across the moon, momentarily dimming its glow, and you're reminded how fragile illumination can be. Someone whispers that the ceremony's real purpose is to remind mortals that they are but reflections in a mirror too vast to grasp. It sends a shiver down your spine, because you realize this ritual isn't about pomps, spectacle, but humility yielding to forces far older and wilder than human resolve. Anthropologists have recorded similar rites serving as calendars signaling the time to hunt river turtles, plant crops, or resolve communal disputes. All aligned to the moon's phases for practical governance rather than pure mysticism. Yet some elders insist the true magic lies in the unseen realms, stirred by each chant, each drumbeat, and each flicker of torchlight. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies originated strictly as agricultural markers or emerged from dreams and visions channeled by visionary elders. The ritual winds down with a final, soft chant that drifts away like embers on a breeze. Dancers drift off in pairs, lanterns bobbing as they return to their hammocks near the riverbank. You stand alone for a moment, the fire's warmth fading, moonlight deepening the shadows around you. You feel as if you've glimpsed both a cultural heartbeat and a secret core of the forest's soul. Keeping your voice quiet, you whisper the closing syllables one more time, au quoi, Mara letting them echo in the stillness, as the last torch guttered by a stray breeze. You slip back to your canoe, every footstep cushioned by moss and moonlight. Your skin tingles with clay, sweat, and the faintest trace of mica dust, evidence that you, too, were part of this living mosaic. The night hum returns, louder now with cicadas and distant frog calls, guiding you away from the clearing and deeper into mystery. You push off, paddle stirring the reflected moonbeams into ripples, carrying you onward toward the next secret the Amazon has whispered through its nocturnal rites. You push past lianas dripping with dew and step into a clearing where sunlight streaks through foliage like fractured glass. The air feels heavier here, charged with stories too dark to linger in daylight. In the distance, you sense the faint rhythm of war, drums, no, not drums, but the echo of legends whispered by villagers. Tales of cannibal kings who ruled forest fiefdoms and dined on enemies beneath great feasts of bone and blood. Your pulse quickens as you trudge forward, half expecting to stumble on a throne carved from femurs. Joke number 1. I hope they have a side of plantains. This royalty probably gets hangry. You reach a mound of earth crowned by mossy stones that form a low circular wall. Vines crawl over carved reliefs, depicting robed figures brandishing spears and holding aloft human limbs. One panel shows a king seated on a dais eating from a chalice. History textbooks note that the Tupinamba, along Brazil's northern coast, practiced exo-cannibalism as part of warring rituals, consuming parts of vanquished foes to absorb their valor. Mainstream fact. But this jungle variant feels darker, orchestrated by monarchs who claimed divine right to feast on dissenters. The stone's green patina glimmers in patches, as though the moss itself remembers those grisly banquets. You lean closer, fingertips brushing cold rock. A stray root coils around your wrist, making you startle. Fringe folklore holds that the kings preserved the skulls of their enemies in hidden crypts, rinsing them in scented oils until they gleamed like onyx. Supposedly, these skulls then whispered, tactical advice in hushed growls voices that guided armies through moonless nights. Historians still argue whether such talking skulls were real artifacts or metaphorical warnings concocted by missionaries, hungry for sensational tales. The scent of earth and decaying wood thickens as you circle the mound, and you recall. The Anaconda Guardian's coils from Section 4, reminding you that serpents and kings both held sway here. You notice serpent motifs snaking among human figures, suggesting the ruler claimed alliance with jungle deities. A slight tremor runs through the stone underfoot, nothing seismic, but a hollow reverberation as though the earth itself resonated with that whisper of bone-laced power. Joke number 2. Note to self when stones rattle, maybe don't brag. Aloud about your squeaky boots. You crouch behind a shattered column, scanning the clearing. Tall palms sway without wind, and distant bird calls break the hush as if startled by your presence. You approach a partially buried sarcophagus, topped with the carved figure of a reclining king. His skeletal grin seems oddly welcoming, beckoning you closer. The lid lies askew, and inside rests a bleached skull enveloped in faded garlands of red berries. Your breath catches this is no myth museum prop, but an ancient relic. Fringe researchers swear that red berries were hallucinogenic, meant to induce prophetic visions when inhaled from the skull's eye sockets. Historians still argue whether such plant rituals formed part of royal funerary rites or were later attributions by travelers with overactive imaginations. Your flashlight beam glides over the skull's surface, picking out tiny incisions around the temple's micro-carvings of jaguars, harpy eagles, and coiled anacondas. You run a fingernail along one line, feeling centuries-old grooves that send a faint tingle through your finger, like the skull itself is greeting you.
All right.
You recall the mirrored temple's reflective hall from Section 8. Could this skull have been displayed in a water chamber to amplify its whispers? The thought prickles your spine. Joke number 3. If that skull starts giving you homework, tell it no thanks. I'm already behind on bedtime reading. A sudden snap echoes behind you. You whirl around, expecting a phantom guard, but find only a fallen frond cracking under its own weight. Still, the moment lingers a reminder that in places steeped in cannibal lore, even shadows seem hungry. You press your palm to the sarcophagus's edge and feel warmer than likely for stone. But the warmth pulses like a faint heartbeat. It makes you wonder if the kings imbued these relics with spells of fortitude, ensuring their power outlived flesh. At the mound center stands a fire pit ringed with scorched stones and charred bones. Sift ash through your gloved fingertips and find a delicate human tooth, its enamel dulled but intact. You pocket it instinctively, imagining it as a grim token to remember this place by. Suspended above the pit, tied with vine, hang severed spears dripping amber resin-preserved offerings to the cannibal king's spirit. Local lore says that on moonless nights, the spears twitch and clatter as though replaying the final rebellions they quelled. Historians still argue whether these suspended arms were ritual weapons or mere deterrents left by local leaders to warn off trespass. You step back, discarding a thought that perhaps you should have brought garlic or some sort of spiritual insect repellent their way. No snakebite kit covers vengeful king spirits. The clearing feels simultaneously empty and full of watchful eyes. You remember the shaman's echo from Section 5? The voice carried through stone halls, urging respect. This place demands a different reverence, one for human extremes. As you circle the pit, you notice faint footprints pressed in the mud, too small for tribal warriors, too large for capuchin monkeys. They lead toward a hidden alcove at the mound's rear. You crouch low and peer inside. Secondary chamber carved at ground level. its walls etched with scenes of feasting and ecstasy, crowds lifting aloft severed limbs and marrow-laced spoons. In one grand tableau, the king raises a chalice as his subjects dance around a blazing pyre. The imagery pulses with energy, as if flames still flicker here in spirit. You crouch to examine the floor and find shards of obsidian, triangular as sacrificial blades. You recall the obsidian panels of the mirror temple and the conch trumpet's voice, symbols of transition between worlds. This alcove feels like the dark mirror of those luminous shrines, reflecting humanity's basest hunger. You gently reach for a blade fragment, mindful of its sharpness, and a shiver darts down your spine. Cold air seems to seep from the alcove's depths, carrying faint whispers of feasting songs. You step back, breath catching as the whispers coil around your eardrums. Feast, ascend, devour doubt. The voice is distant yet intimate, like a memory half remembered. You swallow hard and remind yourself, your mission isn't to indulge base curiosities, but to piece together the Amazon's tapestry threads of wonder and horror alike. As you ascend from the alcove, the clearing transforms under your gaze. What once seemed a mere relic site now feels like a crucible of raw power, and altar where myth and blood fused into rulership. You pause at the mound's edge and trace a spiral carved into its side, and echo of prophecy calling you to guard. The pulse. Perhaps this pulse includes the heartbeat of these lost kings, an admonition to remember their stories not as lurid curiosities, but as cautionary tales about ambition and belief. You step onto a narrow trail leading away from the mound, the jungle, closing in behind you as if sealing the chamber once more. In your pack, the human tooth rests beside your clay-laced brew-vile, pairing of life's most visceral fragments. You trudge onward, the clearing's boundaries blurring, and feel the ancestral voices recede, leaving only your own breath and the distant chorus of cicadas. Trees loom tall, guardians of secrets, both sacred and profane. And you carry with you the weight of legends that taste of both power and mortality. You emerge from the clearing's shadows and follow a low ridge strewn with broken pottery shards, each fragment echoing the spiral motifs you've collected from stones, feathers, and skulls. The canopy above recedes slightly, revealing a slender shaft of sunlight that points like an arrow toward a moss-covered embankment. You approach, heart hammering, and notice a narrow fissure in the earth's too straight to be natural. A vine-draped marker, carved with concentric circles, slants above it, reminding you of the whispering stones back in section 3. Joke number 1. If only this tunnel came with a beware of bats sign. You crouch at the entrance, brushing aside tangled roots to reveal stone steps descending into darkness. The air here tastes of damp clay and ancient breath, charged with the musk of earth itself. You flick on your flashlight and step inside, each footfall stirring motes of dust that dance in the beam. The walls are slick with moisture, and faint glyphs a coiled serpent here. A macaw feather, there are, etched at irregular intervals, like breadcrumbs left by some long-departed guide. Fringe lore claims these tunnels were carved by giant anteaters, acting as spirit companions, burrowing secret corridors for shamans to traverse between realms. Historians still argue whether anteaters hold any spiritual role in Amazonian myth, or if that's simply an anthropomorphic afterthought. Deeper in the corridor opens into a vaulted chamber where the ceiling arches high above, festooned with stalactites dripping mineral-rich water. The echo of each drop is amplified, twinkling like tiny bells. A wide trench bisects the chamber, its bottom strewn with broken obsidian triangles reminiscent of sacrificial blades you saw in the Cannibal King's alcove. You step onto a narrow stone ledge flanking the trench, careful not to disturb its solemn hush. Ancient builders clearly intended this space for ritual passage, not casual exploration, every stone hewn straight, every joint fitting like a puzzle piece. Mainstream archaeologists note that earthen mounds and corridors built by pre-Columbian societies in the Llanos de Mojos region date back over 2,500 years, showing engineering sophistication rivaling Andean terraces. Mainstream fact: A sudden gust of cool air gusts from deeper within, carrying a whiff of sweet decay suggesting organic matter. Maybe hallucinogenic mushrooms, once used in creation myths. Writes. Joke number 2. I hope those mushrooms don't start demanding travel royalties. You step forward, wading through shallow water that laps your boots. It feels warm, as if fed by geothermal springs, and the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi clings to the walls, casting the chamber in a greenish radiance. Fringe mycologists claim these rare fungi induce vivid visions of cosmic serpents coiling through time, granting shamans glimpses of the world's birth. Historians still argue whether Amazonian tribes developed such psychotropic rituals independently, or adopted them via trans-Pacific exchanges. Further on, your flashlight picks out a laurel leaf carving of 2 figures, one human, one jaguar, reaching toward each other across a stylized river. Below them, glyphs spiral outward in concentric frames. You recall the Jaguar Island from Section 11's Cartographer's Map and the Triadic Prophecy of Feathers from Section 7. All these threads converge here: serpent and jaguar, river and spiral. You kneel to brush away silt and reveal a faint inscription in Proto-Tupi script, UA-NIA-Ku. The cartographer's journal hinted that Uniaku means birth in darkness, a reference to creation legends where the world formed from an under-earth womb. Scholars still debate whether Proto-Tupi glyphs represent an early script or purely symbolic iconography. A narrow passage leads you to a domed niche lined with polished quartz crystals, each facet catching your light and fracturing it into pale rainbows. The effect is ethereal. You half expect the chamber to vibrate with ancestral voices. You squat, placing your palm flat on the cool quartz, and feel a subtle hum beneath your fingers, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. An uneasy thrill zips through you. This must be the heart of the buried corridor, a physical locus of creation myth where flesh and stone fuse. Fringe spiritualists suggest ancient engineers planted these crystals to channel cosmic energy, marking the universe's genesis point. Historians still argue whether crystal use in Amazonian sacred sites stems from ritual significance or simple availability in local geology. From the quartz chamber, you spot a narrow shaft leading further down. Torchlight no longer reaches here only. Your flashlight's beam cuts a tunnel through pitch. You squeeze through a tight crevice and emerge into a cavern larger than the last. Its walls carved with bas-reliefs, showing a primal scene. A pair of coiled anacondas forming an egg-shaped oval inside which rests a jaguar cub and a hummingbird nest. You remember the serpent's guardian from Section 4 and the hummingbird symbols from the mirror temple's reflection. This tableau fuses every guiding motif you've gathered: snake, cat, bird, lineaments of water, earth, and sky. Joke number 3. I always knew birds would gate-crash the party eventually. The air here is still. It's the only sound you're breathing and the soft drip of stalagmites. At the center of the cavern lies a shallow depression filled with fine ash. You kneel and scoop fingerfuls, noting the ash glitters faintly perhaps mixed with mica or crushed bone. A carved inscription rings the depression. From the dark womb, life emerges Uniaku. Below it, radiating lines point to 3 small openings in the chamber's rim, one leading back toward the surface, one toward the quartz niche, and a third darker route disappearing into shadow. This dark route calls to you, promising deeper mysteries at the cost of safety. Historians still argue whether such passages were ever meant to be explored or served as metaphors for cyclical underworld. Journeys in Amazonian cosmology. You hesitate, recalling the voices echoing in the temple's shaman's sanctum and the thrumming of the rapids in section 10 creates a dizzying blend of memory and anticipation. The prophecy's final line, "Awaken home," reverberates in your mind, urging you to complete this descent. Cue swallow, brace yourself against a jagged wall, and follow the dark route into a narrow tunnel where the air seems almost electric. Every step feels guided, as if the tunnel itself remembers your lineage as a seeker. After a few tense minutes, you emerge into a hidden shaft where golden light spills down from a fissure above. You shield your eyes and step into a triangular chamber that feels impossibly ancient. The walls here are smooth. It's carved with flowing lines that merge into a single Symbiola stylized tree whose roots and branches form a continuous circuit. Below it, the ground is bare, as if trampled by countless pilgrim feet. You breathe deeply, tasting dust and sunbeams. This is it, the heart of creation myths, the moment where earth sprouted into life, wort into branch, dark into light. You lay a hand on the carved tree and feel warmth radiating through you, a pulse syncing with your own beat. Historians still argue whether Amazonian origin myths center on a world tree or a cosmic egg. But here the imagery is unambiguous. Life springs from a seed planted in darkness and nourished by water, sunlight, and spirit. You close your eyes, letting the chamber's hush fill you, as if standing at the very root of all things. You feel both infinitesimal and infinite, a single breath in a story written before time. You sit cross-legged on the cool stone floor, mind drifting to every spiral stone, mirrored hall, and vanished village you visited. Each relic was a stanza in an epic poem. This chamber is its culmination. You murmur the prophecy once more, guard the pulse, flow with time, waken home and feel its true resonance here, to protect the origins that feed every living thing in this vast green realm. You rise slowly, respect and awe flooding your chest, and prepare to return the way you came, carrying with you the secret of Unyaku and the promise of renewal for all who heed its call. Night deepens as you stand at a junction where waterways, earthen corridors, and ancestral trails converge under a tapestry of stars. The canopy above quivers with bioluminescent moss and distant fireflies, each flicker reminding you of the whispering stones, the glowing lagoon, and the furtive tremor beneath the cannibal king's mound. You hear the river's lullaby in the leaves, and every rustle feels like a callback, a reminder that each legend you've chased is but a chord in the Amazon's grand symphony. Joke number 1. If only your GPS could reroute you through all these secret shrines and back home for dinner. You trace your steps with mindful reverence, recalling the Serpent Temple's cold corridor, the shaman's echo vibrating in your bones, and the vanished village's silent hearths. Mainstream surveys estimate the Amazon basin shelters over 40,000 plant species, a vivid testament to life's stubborn flourish in even the most concealed corners of the earth. Mainstream fact. Fringe folklore insists that some of these plants are sentient forest guardians, whispering warnings to careless wanderers through the rustling of their leaves. Historians still argue whether such tales stem from genuine indigenous cosmologies or are modern projections, echoing back our own yearning for a living earth. A gentle breeze carries the faintest drumbeat, weaving in and out of the cicadas, chorus and echo of the moonlit ceremony you witnessed not long ago. You rub your forearms, still tingling from painted clay, and remember the feathered prophecy's triad of syllables that charted your path. Atasha, Shatari, Rinasu. Cross your minds, I play visions of the mirror temples shifting, reflections, and the rapids' haunting melodies, each element knitting together in a dance of water, stone, and sound. Joke number 2. If the forest ever started its own streaming service, I'd binge watch The Legend of the Lost Cartographers. Meteor-forged compasses. Ahead. The trail widens into a clearing framed by kapok trees, whose buttress roots form natural arches. Here, all previous sites converge. A spiral carved in the bark mirrors the petroglyphs. A shallow pool at your feet reflects 100 campfires ignited through centuries. Bottlenose fish flit across the water's surface, recalling the pink. Dolphins that once smirked at you in the slow current. Fringe naturalists claim these fish sing when moonlight hits the water just right, a secret if you know when to listen. Historians still argue whether these songs formed part of ancient navigational codes or were simply the result of nighttime. Plankton blooms. You kneel beside the pool and cup water in your hands, tasting its crisp clarity and feeling the pulse of all that has flowed into this basin. Its dam of memory releases a new ripple. The conch trumpet's resonant call, its cartographer's ghost chart, the cannibal king's bone-laced feasts. They swirl together like pigments in mortar, creating a living fresco of human hope and hubris. You smile wryly. At least no one's asked for pop-up ads in this primeval gallery. Joke number 3. The Amazon's only ad banner would be warnings. Side effects may include life-changing insight. Leaning back, you let the mosaic of stories wash over you, some playful, all integral. You feel the forest exhale, acknowledging your role as both witness and steward. You sense that by tracing these legends, you've woven yourself into a lineage of seekers who came before, each one adding a stanza to the Amazon's endless poem. Historians still argue whether any one site holds primacy in the basin's vast narrative, or if every whispering root, every shimmering mirror, and every echoing chamber deserves equal reverence. The night grows quieter, as if even the crickets pause to honor this final reckoning. You rise, pack your artifacts, feathered prophecies, golden dust flecks, obsidian shards, into worn pouches, ensuring each relic is sheltered for stories yet to be told. Your boots press into soft earth, and for the first time you feel both at home and joyously disoriented, understanding that the Amazon's heart can never be fully mapped. It must be felt in every heartbeat, every gentle sigh of breeze, every distant call of a howler monkey welcoming you back. With one last look at the pool's mirrored surface, you murmur the prophecy's full refrain. Guard the pulse, flow. With time, awaken home and feel it resonate in your chest like a promise. The forest embraces this vow, its night pulse aligning with yours. You step onto the trail leading away, carrying the convergence of countless legends beneath your skin. Confident that some stories survive only if someone walks them, listens, and breathes them into life once more. Slowly now, you let your pace soften, each step cushioned by moss and fragrant leaf litter. The forest's orchestra has shifted to a gentle lullaby. Somewhere, a tree frog hums. A breeze stirs spiderwebs into shimmering threads, and distant river echoes whisper the promise of dawn. You are a lone figure moving through history's living pages, each breath a soft turning of time's fragile leaf in this quiet hour. Remember that every carved spiral, every shifting reflection, and every echoing drumbeat served not to tempt treasure hunters, but to guide souls toward deeper care for this emerald realm. The Amazon's stories are woven into its living tapestry, stories that thrive only when heard, honored, and passed along in hushed tones. You carry them now as a slow ember of responsibility flickering within your chest. Let the warmth of that ember ease any unsettled thoughts. Let the night's cool hush cradle your mind into stillness. Think of the serpent's protective coils, the macaw's vivid flight, the lost cartographer's ghost chart, and the cannibal king's cautionary banquet as chapters in an eternal fable, neither beginning nor end. Only perpetual dialogue between humanity and wilderness as you drift toward slumber. Imagine the Amazon sighing in contentment, its pulse steady yet ever shifting beneath your feet. Rest assured that the legends you've gathered will ripple outward, igniting curiosity and stewardship in others who dare to listen. Sleep lightly, cradled by the forest's breath, knowing that you are both a keeper and a link in the chain of countless dreamers who venture into green realms and return changed. Good night, wanderer. Your journey now folds softly into dreams, where moss-carpeted temples and whispering stones await your return, ever patient, ever alive. End of script. Sweet dreams.